You guys remember Greg Locke, right? I've covered him a few times on my channel. He's the dude who's convinced Mitch McConnell is receiving Illuminati hand signals from people sitting behind him in Congress.
And the clearest thing I've ever seen in my life is when Mitch McConnell gets off track, he turns around and the guy behind him gives him the Illuminati hand signal of authoritarianism to make sure he stays on track. Just remind that sucker, we're still in control, we're still paying your bills, and you do anything against what we say, and we'll make sure nobody finds your body, Jimmy Hoffa.
Or you might remember him from his famous Dunkin' Donuts meltdown, where he was asked to wear a mask in Dunkin' Donuts and completely melted down over it.
He comes walking out with this little mask, and he's like, "Sir, I just want you to know." Now, by the way, he didn't have to embarrass me in front of everybody, but he did, which was probably a mistake, because I'm not a real silent guy when you push my buttons too far. He's like, "Sir, the next time you come into my store, I want you to have a mask on." I said, "Okay, Lord, just help me. May I stay calm? May I not say a word?" But I'm not a sheep, and so sometimes I just have to say things back.
Not a sheep, huh? I thought that's something Christians aspired to be. I guess he's gonna end up on the goat side when God separates the sheep from the goats.
I'll go to jail over this situation. It is the golden calf. I'm sick of Christians saying things like this. Well, it's just a mask. No, it's not just a mask. It's a compliance device. This is not about safety. This is about surrendering of our rights.
Yeah, that's the dude I'm talking about. This isn't even the worst of it, but I figured I'd give you guys a couple basic reminders. The dude is way unhinged from reality, and he has been for a while. He's a Christian nationalist, and that shines through in a recent interview he did with a guy named Michael Petro, so I wanted to take a look at the latest nutty thing he did. Let's get into it. First, let me give you a little introduction to who Michael Petro is. He's the guy on the right in this picture. He goes by Apostle Michael Petro, and he's a conservative radio host for Voice of Healing Radio. He's also a pastor of the Voice of Healing Church, obviously. He's relatively well known. Anyways, let's give this clip a watch and see what he had to say.
A lot of the guys I'm talking to, they're openly saying now that the election was illegitimate.
Yep.
What's your feelings?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah, I'll go to my grave believing, and everybody else is starting to realize it, but the left wants to cover it up. You know, they say follow the science until the science shows them something they don't like. And the forensic science proved that the man won by a landslide. Trump won, and Biden's just as fraudulent today as he ever has been.
Oh, please. When I started my channel, I swore I would never get involved in politics. In retrospect, it was futile to try to avoid it. Religion and politics has become so inextricably linked in the US that we're well on our way to becoming a Christian nationalist state. It hasn't always been this way. In fact, it wasn't like this until very recently. For the first couple hundred years the US existed, they took separation of church and state very seriously. It wasn't until the 60s, 70s, and 80s when Billy Graham, Jerry Falwell, and others tried to link politics and religion. And they succeeded. Now you can't run as a Republican unless you have the evangelical voting bloc behind you. They sway the discussion. They influence every election from school boards all the way up to President of the United States. So again, it was silly for me to think I could avoid politics when it's so intertwined with religion. Now about what Greg Locke said. Forensic science proves that Trump won by a landslide. When did Greg Locke start trusting science? Dude detests science in every other context of his life. For the record, he's just straight up lying here. That's not true. I don't know what forensic science he thinks proves that Trump won, but there's no forensic science to be had here. It's simple math. Trump got fewer electoral votes and actual votes than Biden. That means Biden wins. Simple as that. Let's keep listening.
And I don't believe God's done with this nation. I believe he's about to expose a lot of people in a lot of ways.
I think it has to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it goes beyond an election now.
Yeah, very much.
People have to be, put in jail.
Yeah.
I really believe we're at that time where people have to be held to an account now, because to me it really is a treasonous act.
Yep, and I believe many of them will be held accountable, and I pray so.
I'm with you on that, brother. I do believe the same thing.
Wow, that's fascinating. You know, I was talking about a QAnon video the other day where a top QAnon quote-unquote decoder was telling us something similar. Check this out. This is Dave Hayes.
Q has often said, especially over the last 6 months, this is going to be the end of the D party.
Yeah, I believe that.
The end of the Democrat Party. Okay, now, if you are, average person listening, watching Q, like, what do you mean the end of the Democrat Party? The Democrat Party is not going to end. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I'm going to explain to you how the Democrat Party is going to end. What we are going to see in the next year unrolled is likely hundreds of members of Congress. They're going to be arrested and they're going to be prosecuted for corruption.
Oddly familiar, right? The funny thing is the video we just watched is from May 2019. It's 2.5 years old. This is like the new end times prediction. They keep saying there will be mass arrests, people are going to jail for what they did, God told me Trump would win, God wanted Trump, blah blah blah, but nothing ever comes of it. 2.5 years later, they're still saying the same shit. When are they coming back to reality with the rest of us? Well, unfortunately, one guy, somebody who goes by Patriot Pastor, has come back to reality. I covered him the other day too. Check this clip out.
Because people are rising up. So I encourage every conservative, real conservative, every Christian, every pastor to rise up, begin to do something about it. Time to be upset. No more, we're not sitting on our knees anymore. We're praying about it. God's not going to do nothing. The God inside of you is telling you to rise up and become the man and the woman you're supposed to be on this earth. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the battlefield.
This is what happens when they come back to reality, when they realize God isn't going to do anything for them because either he isn't on their side or he doesn't want to get involved. I'm not sure which one is worse, them living in a delusion where tons of mass arrests are going to take place in the near future, or them trying to make it happen themselves because they realize God isn't going to be involved. I guess Greg Locke is in that hazy in-between where he wants to get violent, he's about to get violent, but he's still kind of hanging back and waiting for God to do something about it. Before we continue, I want to mention something. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, you can support me in a few ways. First, there's Patreon. That's probably the best way. But if you want to get something back for your support, you can check out my Teespring, or you can check out my Etsy shop. I sell all kinds of cool stuff on there, including these signs. If you want to keep Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons from knocking on your door, put one of these out front. I sell a bunch of other stuff on there too, including game and controller stands for every system from the original Nintendo to the PlayStation 4, so give it a look. You might find something you like. Anyways, let's keep listening to Greg Locke talk to the apostle.
Everybody tells guys like us, well, just keep it to the pulpit, just talk about Jesus, don't preach about politics. But here's the problem, they don't understand that if we don't call out corrupt politics, we're not going to have a platform from even which to preach about Jesus Christ. They're going to take it away. We're giving it to them, you know? They're so willy-nilly about taking our rights. And so if we don't push back, then I think people are beginning to realize, wow, we are going to fall to tyranny. These preachers are the ones that are on the front line. It was the Black Robe Regiment of the American Revolution that would preach on Sunday and pull their clerical robes off and lead their men into war that saved the Republic.
Oh, scratch that. Looks like he crossed the line. He expects God to do something about it, but he wants to do something about it himself. And the rallying cry he's using is, they're going to take our pulpits away if we don't fight. It's morally, ethically, and legally wrong to preach politics from the pulpit. But even doing that wouldn't get your pulpit taken away. It would get your tax-exempt status taken away. Greg Locke has a bad habit of using God as a shield. He says all kinds of insane, messed up stuff, and he uses his status as a preacher as a protection. Anytime somebody calls him out on it, it's because they hate Christians. They're persecuting him. It's embarrassing. Let's keep watching.
And so what I'm finding is I'm getting to preach at some of the largest political gatherings on the planet, and I get to talk about Jesus. And people are cool with it. And so God's using politics as a platform for his glory. And I don't think there's any way we can discount that.
Yeah, I believe we've crossed the line. There's no going back.
None.
We got to get in the fight now because the Democratic Party just isn't going to tolerate Christianity at all at this point. And it's either sink or swim.
Yeah.
And I believe the Lord is calling a violent church out.
The Lord is calling a violent church out. That should be concerning to everybody listening. These people are revving themselves up for literal war. This isn't a religious movement. It's almost entirely a political movement. Religion and politics have special, unique protections under the law, and they've co-opted each other to get the best of both worlds. Politicians accuse people of religiously persecuting them, and religion uses politics to gain more power. I came from an extremist background. I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness. After coming out of that situation and learning about what happened to me, I believe that going extreme in any direction is a bad thing. At the very least, it's a bad thing for me. I've put a concerted effort into staying away from extremism in any form. I've heard some people argue recently that in some cases, an ends justify the means mentality is a good thing. I can understand where they're coming from, but when I sit here day in and day out and watch people like Greg Locke, Dave Hayes, Kenneth Copeland, Hank Kunneman, and others call for actual violent action against people who disagree with support them because they believe the ends justify the means, it concerns me. I get that some people are happy with where they're at with their ends justify the means mentality, but having come from an extremist group myself, I believe that violence in any form, no matter what, is unjustified. If we want to live in a civilized society, we have to discourage violence at all costs. Greg Locke and Apostle Michael Petro are outright encouraging violence here. They're saying they need violence to solve their problems. We should all be concerned about this. By the way, I said this the other day on some of my videos, but I don't want you guys to get stressed out about this stuff. The chips fell where they fell. We were dealt the hand we were dealt, and all we can do is play it. Don't let this get to you. The moral arc bends toward justice. Conservatism at its core is resistance to change. Unfortunately for them, change is inevitable. That's what human societies do. We change and grow and improve as time goes on. Sometimes it's a few steps back, but we will inevitably take a few steps forward. Just do your best and don't worry about the rest. Anyways, that's all I've got for you. Thanks for watching, guys.